What's up, guys? Fractal Markets here, 3:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday, November 23rd. Just going to briefly break down the two trades that I took today. Ended up missing out on potentially hedging longs, and this is based on the fact that it was my interpretation of the market this morning. Again, this is the 15-minute chart that we were inducing this sort of area right here, induced top, something like this, and sweeping up into this POI, filling up this imbalance. And the narrative was correct. It just didn't end up running down into TP. There just wasn't enough, resting liquidity, I guess, underneath these lows to be able to facilitate a new low. So what ended up happening is we came down to mitigate, which prints equal lows. So I'll show you the thought process behind the entry. Pretty simple chalk and kind of flip zone. So essentially what I saw was we tapped into higher time frame supply. We basically had built up liquidity resting here. We induced that liquidity on the top side. And then we kind of saw this change of character start on the 1 minute right here. Now, what I ended up doing was just kind of waiting to see how price developed before putting a limit order on this, because putting a limit order on this right away can do something like this and sweep into the extreme. So what I ended up doing was just watching how liquidity kind of built once we kind of changed character right here. And when I saw all this area kind of building up like this, what I ended up doing was I actually took a market order that got filled right around the 50% region of this guy right here, and I gave myself about a 2 pip stop. And the only reason I did was because I saw this sort of wick hanging out here, and I just wanted to be able to cover in and around that region. Just for whatever reason, we ended up coming back up to that more extreme portion of this little range. You guys will also notice that there was a 1 minute demand that failed, creating supply at this area. So a nice little DS flip entered on that. Now, I get a lot of questions, why didn't you just wait till the extreme? And quite frankly, if I would have had my order on when we originally broke right here, if I would have been on the charts, I would have had it set at the extreme. But after liquidity kind of built like this, I would have realized that we just needed to induce these equal highs, and I would have been more than comfortable putting my order on this level based off of that. More than likely not going to come up and revisit this up until a little bit later, and you'll see that in a few minutes. So let's go back out to the 5 minute, and I'll just kind of see what's going on here. So ultimately, the low that made the high right here is basically in this region. So when we break this low, typically what ends up happening is we're going to come back to the extreme, and by extension what we've done is also kind of mitigate this more extreme level underneath this and kind of induce this level, if you will. You kind of got that resting liquidity underneath these newfound relatively equal lows right here. Maybe stretching it out here, but ultimately when we saw this again changing character and then come back and mitigate the extreme, there was all kinds of opportunity to get in long, and with the idea of this should this should be able to kind of take out the high in terms of expectational order flow in the 15. Now, with this said, the problem I sort of had with this was, okay, well, if we've broken this 5 minute or 15-minute low right here, essentially what this is a higher time frame potential change in character. Now, not to say that we can't come and take out these highs, but I just have a funny feeling that this right here just kind of got induced across equal highs, swept into the POI, and then immediately changed character, which brings me to my next trade. And again, not to say that this is going to end up taking out the lows, but if you look at kind of what's going on here, maybe you'll be able to kind of read between the lines. It just looks like there's a lot built up with higher time frame intention kind of in mind. Now, we may end up coming out and just kind of taking out these highs one last time, maybe go a little bit higher, maybe go a little bit higher than this POI. Not really sure. Nobody really knows for certain, but ultimately, the bottom line is you got to get into trades that are of high probability. So all I did was say, okay, well, ultimately we've broken structure here. the extreme of the move is up in here. I kind of have this one refined down to that 5-minute up move before the down move. You can see there's a small bit of imbalance. We essentially created these equal highs, swept into the equal highs, and then we're going to get into the second entry here in just a second. So this is a little bit outside of my trading hours, but it was just such a textbook setup, and I was kind of a little bit cheesed off at the fact that my sells didn't end up going the way that I had planned. Now, typically I don't use premium and discount on lower time frame legs, but I'm going to get to that in just a second. So ultimately, we had this kind of built up mitigation process. We're just barely pushing into new highs, barely pushing into new lows. So obviously, we clear and take liquidity like this, take it across like this. And once this happens, we kind of sweep into the extreme of the move. This is where I start looking at potential setups. So the setup here was, this is not the low that we're waiting for it to break. The low that needs to break is kind of down in this region, because this is the origin of that move that put us into and failed to. So this could have easily got swept and tapped into the POI and then ended up breaking new highs, which obviously it didn't. Now, what I ended up looking for here was saying, okay, well, if we broke structure here, what's the highest point in the leg that's unmitigated that shows imbalance? So what I ended up doing is, you can see this premium and discount over here, but I'm just going to draw another one over here. So this is sort of like the leg sitting like this, and if you do something like this and you just kind of bring it down, you can kind of limit your areas in which okay, we've essentially made new 1 minute structure, new swing low or 1 minute low, and then the 1 minute high up in here. You could argue that this is the high as well, but this only allows you to really look at one area that wasn't mitigated with imbalance, and that was the wick. So I essentially put my order on here and gave myself a 2-pip stop. Again, just kind of covering the tops of these wicks. And what you could have done is just said, okay, well, here's that up move before the down move, and easily just taken, maybe the 50% of that. And the candle I'm talking about is right here. So I just refined a little bit further. Wasn't sure if I was going to get tapped in. I watched this thing tap in like this, basically fail to make the low. And then ultimately what that means is the high is going to get ran, probably mitigate the 50%, which creates also the liquidity that's necessary for us to be able to jump into the trade. So that was kind of the trade idea for this guy. Now, whether or not this is going to get held out for long term, I haven't taken any partials on it yet, and we're kind of revisiting this this extreme, very similar PA to what happened down over here. We've ultimately taken out low areas and low areas here. But the bottom line is, we don't necessarily need to do anything in the direction that I'm hoping for it to go. But I'm willing to, take a break even on it if that's the case, because I do believe that there is a higher time frame move behind this. It's just a matter of time before it ends up happening. So if I end up taking a break even, I did take some partials on the other one, and I'll just kind of go through that really quick too. So essentially, when I saw us kind of tapping into this area right here of demand, and then we swept and then kind of changed character in here. As soon as I saw this change of character, I actually took 50% of the position off, and I just basically kept myself outside of the trade for obvious reasons. I'm actually just thinking about this now too. I think I actually took another position in here, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just jump down to the 1 minute, and I'll talk about that one as well. Where did I do that? Yeah, okay, so we'd come up and tapped into, where are we? Was it right here? Oh goodness, I'm sorry. I don't really remember what I did here. I want to say it was this right here. I can go back in my MT4 and check it out for anybody who is interested, but I think we had this break a structure, and very similar. I just kind of did something like this, and just said, okay, well, the only thing that's left unmitigated is going to be this inside bar really up in this region. So I covered the highs of this, and I think I ended up taking sells something in and around this inside bar, and then keeping my stop loss tucked just above this with a 2.0 pip stop, and then running this into the low. So yeah, I'll have to double check that. Not really super important. That wasn't really the high quality setup. The high quality setup is obviously up in this region up here. Again, I don't really use premium and discount for 1 minute legs. Just kind of toying around with the idea of selecting areas on the initial change of character to give me just a little bit better idea of which ones to select. So hopefully this is helpful. You know, you don't necessarily have to leave feedback on YouTube, but if you want to see anything else, feel free to shoot me a DM on either Instagram or Telegram. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys later.